Top of the morning. It is Sunday, February 11th, and I am here with your geopolitical news. Al Jazeera reports UNWRA refutes Israeli implications of Hamas tunnel below Gaza HQ. The aid agency said it has no knowledge of areas beneath its headquarters in Gaza. So before I seen the report that Israel was trying to say that the aid agency had tunnels beneath it. And so the aid agency has responded by saying they have no knowledge of tunnels underneath their headquarters and that this is all a part of what I've been previously been saying before as it relates to Israeli war tactics, where you are implying that there's a discrepancy with being able to send aid to some place because you're saying that this place is compromised. You're saying that this humanitarian aid building is compromised because there's tunnels underneath it that's operated and controlled by Hamas. And so there can only be a right or a wrong answer. It can't really be any in between. And so there's either tunnels underneath this humanitarian aid building or there's not. And the humanitarian aid has already responded saying they have no knowledge of tunnels underneath their building or any area that they're in. And so, what is it that Israel is implying? If the humanitarian aid building had no knowledge or has no knowledge that there's tunnels underneath it, then obviously they can't be charged with working with or aiding Hamas. And so this situation, like I said, is just another example of Israeli war tactics to not help or to not aid those individuals who they deem terrorists. And it seems like they deem all of Palestine terrorists. In other geopolitical news, Al Jazeera reports, why does the U.S. refuse to call for a ceasefire in Gaza? U.S. political scientist Stephen Walsh says Israel has changed over the years, but Biden's policy is stuck in the past. I'm going to play a little bit of this video to give you guys some context.
Both sides, Hamas and Israel, have made their offers to end one of the most brutal wars of modern times. Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire, and Israel wants more temporary truce. Now's the hard part. Negotiation.
So now, Hamas wants a permanent ceasefire. Israel wants a temporary ceasefire. So Israel is only agreeing for a ceasefire for a temporary basis, and then they want to continue their military campaign.
Through mediators to find a compromise as the war bleeds into its fifth month. With every day that passes, conditions worsen for the 2.3 million Palestinians who are surrounded, isolated, and desperate in Gaza. Zoom out, and things don't look all that stable from the U.S. vantage point across the region. Armed groups are hitting American targets in Iraq, in Syria, in Jordan, and the U.S. is now hitting back. Lebanon and Israel have daily cross-border attacks, and the U.S. has bombed targets in Yemen to stop Ansar Allah from trying to impose a naval blockade on trade with Israel.
In which I don't believe that they will be able to do. I mean, the the Yemenis, the Houthi rebels have already disrupted that area in that region. And so there's billions upon billions of dollars that's being lost in that area because of the military campaign that the Houthi rebels are waging on the Red Sea.
So are we witnessing the beginning of a new chapter in the Middle East, one where the United States has much less control and less ability to pursue its interests? Today we're talking
Much less control. One where the United States has much less control. And this is the problem, and we all can see that this is the problem. The United States loves to be in the control around the world, almost as if their target is world dominance. And this is what it appears to be.
with political scientist Stephen Walt, professor of international relations at Harvard University and author of The Hell of Good Intentions, America's Foreign Policy Elite and the Decline of U.S. Primacy. Stephen, it's great to have you on. Look, I mean, 4 months ago, at the beginning of this conflict, you and I spoke, and you were very prescient about what you would saw would evolve and come in. And I guess my big question to you today is, does the Israel-Gaza conflict, which grinds on, matter in any substantial way to the United States? What are the impacts of this conflict on President Biden, on the perception of American power in the world? Or is it trivial?
Oh, it's certainly not trivial. I mean, this is, I think, exposed.
I mean, that's a question that we all can answer. Is this problem trivial? Now, from you and I's perspective, it may or may not be. It all depends on the information that you have as to the reasons why this conflict has started. But that's beyond the scope of things because a lot of these conflicts are happening in other regions. You have to look behind the scenes and um you have to peel back the layers, so to say, to find out the United States involvement and the reason as to why. That's what you have to draw the conclusion of, and then you have to come to another conclusion as to whether it's trivial or whether it's of a great importance.
Double standards in American foreign policy in ways that are damaging to the United States, certainly damaging to the Biden administration. I don't know how many, I've lost count of how many times Secretary of State Blinken has been to the region to try and make some progress. Thus far, he's failed across the board. This has, I think, made the United States look more hypocritical in claiming to stand for a rules-based order, to be a defender of human rights. And, you know, when you think about it, it's America's adversaries who benefit most greatly from events like this, because not only does the United States look somewhat ineffectual, but it makes us look inconsistent in the eyes of many.
And yet, when it comes to try to influence Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to not kill innocent people, and a country that is largely dependent on U.S. aid and support, America looks pretty darn impotent, in my view. What do you think?
Yeah, well, there's two.
Looks very impotent. You understand? Looks very not just impotent, immature, looks very lost. Um, there's a lot of things that's going on with the United States of America. And, you know, President Putin says something that was key in his Tucker Carlson exclusive interview. You understand? And he spoke to the nature of the United States of America. They really don't know how to be diplomatic. The only real thing that they know how to do is use force. And so it begs one to question, is the country that you really live in, is it really a democracy? Because when you look at the actions of the United States um, military industrial complex, the United States government, and you look at their actions abroad, it tells a different story.
Two problems here. One problem about which I've written extensively in the past, of course, is American domestic politics. The United States has lots of potential leverage over Israel, which it doesn't use because that would generate a backlash from the Israel lobby, and that's a domestic political problem for Biden or any other American president. The other difficulty here, and it doesn't just apply to Israel, is that in conflicts like this, others usually have more stake in the game than we do, precisely because we're so secure already. So all of the various actors in the Middle East whom we're trying to influence are hard to push around because ultimately they've got more skin in the game. They're willing to bear greater costs, and they're going to pursue their own objectives independent of what the United States does, especially if the United States is not using all the leverage at its disposal. But sometimes, even if it tries, others are willing to resist. You just look at the Houthis in Yemen right now, who are not very powerful, but they care more about what's going on in their neighborhood than we do.
Right. And so this is the reason why you're getting a response from the Houthi rebels as such. And so it's almost like, when you look at the bravery of such individuals, you keep, these politicians and these individuals who may have had some history in the military industrial complex, they love to judge other military groups and the such. And so they keep referring to the Houthi rebels as a very small regime, really incapable of doing this and doing that. But it seems like they're very capable of creating a deterrent in the Red Sea, so much so that all cargo in and out this area has been ceased. And so you can say, or you can brush them off, or you can downplay them as this small group, this small regime, this group that really can't do anything. They really don't they really don't hold no real significant military, you know, strength or weight, as it relates to that area. But they're still causing a problem. Enough of a problem that this whole area shipping has virtually ceased to exist. So I would say, in that sense, the Houthi rebels' military campaign in the Red Sea, their military operation in the Red Sea, is a success.
Well, one of the things that I know you've been weighing in on are the various chess pieces and moves of the players. And Hamas has come out and issued its terms on what it would accept as part of a ceasefire, a very large release of prisoners in Israel in exchange for all of the hostages and ending all conflict for 45 days. Israel is rejecting that at the moment, and it has its terms for ceasefire. On top of this,
And I think once again, what we all have to be reminded of is in the first ceasefire, there was a hostage exchange. And notice I say a hostage exchange because those that were being held captive in Israel, there were women and children that were being held captive for months and even years. And so these people that were released through the exchange when there was a ceasefire, I always questioned, where did they come from? Nobody wanted to know, well, who are these people that Israel is releasing to Hamas? How long have they been in Israel, and what were their crime? What were their crimes? What did they do? Because it seems to me that what was done on October 7th was done in retaliation for what has been being done to Palestine and the Palestinians for years. If you are kidnapping, raping, robbing, looting our homes, and then you're kidnapping people and detaining them without any charges, and it takes for an act of violence, an act of aggression for you to release them. So who's right and who's wrong in this situation? There's many that argue that October 7th was a tragedy. I don't feel like that. I'm starting to get the sense that maybe October 7th was justice. Maybe it was truly justice. Another geopolitical news, Al Jazeera reports Russia and Ukraine exchanged 100 prisoners each after UAE mediation. President Zelensky says a total of 3,135 Ukrainians were freed from Russian captivity and hopes exchanges continue. Once again, this is a contradiction. This is a contradiction to the narrative that's being painted by the United States of America and its allies as it pertains to Russia. So, to be of pure evil, why would this exchange happen? Why would you free prisoners if you are such an evil individual, the ruler of such an evil regime? Why would you free these individuals? Why would you free them? They're captives just as there are captives that are Russian that are being held by Ukraine. Why did the exchange happen if this individual was so evil? And this is the question that has to plague your mind just like it plagues my mind when it comes to the information and the propaganda that's being spread about a nation, a country, a president, a dictator. These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. Because if it doesn't make sense, then it will never make sense. You can't make it make sense. You can't have it both ways. And so you can't say that an individual is so foul, so evil, so wrong in a situation, but every chance they get, they try to do something right. In other geopolitical news, Al Jazeera reports Al Shabaab claims attack on UAE military in Somalia. The group claimed the attack as it considers the UAE an enemy for backing the Somalian government. Once again, the continent of Africa is a black box of sorts because there's so many players and there's so many countries inside the continent of Africa. And, you know, there's an individual that I'll be watching on YouTube, and I'm going to start showing you guys some of his content because he has a very, he's very educated when it comes to the continent of Africa. Um, but what I was saying was there's so many different players when it comes to the continent of Africa as it relates to um, colonialists. And so this is the reason why the continent of Africa has been divided. and why there are so many countries and why you need a passport to go from one country to the next, even though it's all on the same continent, which makes absolutely no sense. And to the people of Africa who have been there for centuries, for thousands of years, these people understand this. These people understand that Africa was never divided in this way. And so the conflicts that you see happening are places in Africa that are uprising, that want the colonialist regimes to be removed. They want them gone. They want them out of their nations, their countries. They want them off of the continent. And so for some of them, as a meaning the countries, for some of them to feel this way, and for some of them to have this sentiment, and for some of them to be uprising, and for some of them to be fighting, and then you have other countries who are still in cahoots with the Western nations and the Western powers, and are still allowing their countries to be robbed of their natural resources. Well, this is the conflict. So it's almost easy for France, for the British, for the United States of America, and countries of the sort to sit back and watch these conflicts unfold, because they very well know that they still have the assistance of some of the countries in that continent. And so these are the countries that they'll use to attack, to negate the prosperity of other countries that want to be sovereign. Okay, people, so I'm on the YouTube platform. And in the previous segment, I said that there was a brother that I'm consuming his content because he's very educated when it comes to the continent of Africa. And so this is the individual that I was speaking about. This is his YouTube channel. His name is Zach. I really don't know how to pronounce his last name. I hope I pronounce it the right way, but it seems to be Mukasa, Zach Mukasa. Maybe I'm saying it right, maybe I'm saying it wrong, but I'm gonna play a little bit of this video so you guys can understand what I'm speaking about as it relates to his knowledge on the continent of Africa.
Africa. We talk about the diaspora and we have discussions that include us so we can grow together. So today we're going to talk about something very interesting. In fact, you remember we spoke about Burkina Faso. Here's a map. We also spoke about Niger. Here is a map. We also spoke about Mali. Here's a map. Now, these are three.
Now I'm gonna stop it right there. If you notice where he just said these places are, you understand? Right here, and right here. These places are neighboring countries. You understand? And when I said right here, I meant where I'm pointing my arrow to. So I'm sorry if I confuse some of you. But right now, I have my arrow in the region that we're speaking about right now. So it's these three countries right here that have had coups within the last several years, and there's been military regime change. And so these are the places that he's focusing on right now. And so these are the places that he's speaking about. But as you look at the map, look at how vast Africa is. And just look at how the colonialists have divided the continent. The continent is so divided, and it's because of colonialist regimes that have moved into the continent to extract the continent's natural resources, and they have divided it. And so, as I said previously, Africans cannot even travel from one place to another without having a visa. And this is inside the continent of Africa. That would be equivalent to an individual not being able to travel to, say, from New York to Chicago without having a passport, from LA to Arizona without having a passport, from Jersey to Virginia without having a passport. It's equivalent to saying that you would not be able to effectively move without a passport from one state to the next. It's almost the same equivalent. But as we know, the continent of Africa is enormously um much more vast than the continent of South America. So let's get back to the video.
Very interesting countries that in the past couple of years have worked very hard to free themselves from new colonization. I'm going to explain to you. Many years ago, Europeans sat together in Berlin in order to come and share Africa. So they wanted to go to Africa and each have a part of Africa without them having to fight each other. That's how countries came about. Before that, there was no countries in Africa.
So understand the colonialists wanted to move into Africa and they did not want to have issues amongst themselves. So they decided to split Africa up. And this is how we derive at the point in time, the present point in time that we are today. This is how Africa has been divided and split because the colonialist regimes moved in and they did not want to have conflict amongst each other. So they divided it.
Country was a big block. Yes, there were tribes. Yes, there were clans and families. Yes, there were communities of people that were interacting with each other. Sometimes fought each other. But most of the time, we lived in peace. They intermarried, they exchanged, they did commerce and business together. But when Europeans came to Africa, each wanted a part of Africa so they can loot and steal and take away minerals, whatever, everything from the continent because the continent was so rich. But in order for them to come to Africa, they had to create countries and discuss within themselves so they don't have to fight each other. That's why they created Congo as it is today. They created Rwanda. They created Uganda. They created Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi, Namibia, South Africa. All these countries, even though the land existed, were never countries as they are today. They were just land. Anyway,
So do you understand? These are key points that we all need to understand because maybe you didn't understand this from history. Africa was just one piece of land, and Africans migrated that land east, west, north to south. They did as they pleased, they went as they came. Do you understand that? Africans, tribes, different different tribes living in different places. They migrated different places. They did as they pleased. And so for someone to come into your homeland and then divide your homeland and say, you know what, from now on, in order for you to go from this place to this place, you need to come see me for some paperwork so that I can give you the proper authority to go from this place to this place. It's the most absurd, ridiculous thing that anyone can imagine to hear.
our subject today is Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They are moving forward. Niger has decided to now, through the president, to create a tomato development plant. This is a tomato treatment plant that's going to not just sell brand new tomato from the land that are organic, that best quality, and also put them into boxes for development. In the past, they used to do it in a way that they will send it to Europeans at a very cheap price, and Europeans will take this product, these tomatoes and stuff, and resell it at a very high price, and sometimes resell it to the country that sent it to them. Let me repeat that. An African country produces tomato, sells it to Europeans. Europeans wash it, put it into box, and sell it back to Africans. Now that's not going to happen anymore. Right?
So If that is not appalling to you, then I don't know what is. And that is something as trivial as a certain good, a certain good like tomatoes, which is a good that is very important, but nonetheless, it's just a good. But at the same time, look at your practices. Look at the diabolical nature of your enemy. For you to sell your enemy goods, and then your enemy turn around and sell those goods back to you at a higher price. I'm using the word enemy because what else can describe an individual or a group that would do such a thing?
Traore, young man, about 34 years old, great spirit, is moving the country to a new direction. Is now very slowly working into the economics of the country, trying to fix things, trying to develop, to push the country forward. Ibrahim Traore, he was receiving lump sum, a salary as a president. He refused to take the salary. He said, I don't want my salary as a president anymore. Because I'm a soldier, please pay me as a soldier. Pay me the soldier's salary. Do not pay me as a president. And by doing so, he led the country into a movement. What's this movement? Everybody in the country is contributing from their personal salary into the government to help the government fight.
Ibrahim Toure, right? He not only denounced the salary that was being given to him, and he was being given enormous amounts of money for taking over and becoming the new president of Burkina Faso. But he denounced that payment and said that he would rather be paid as a regular soldier. And now, because of his actions and his movements, the people of Burkina Faso are willingly giving up portions of their salary to the military, to the government, so that in a form of support, so that they can properly fight terrorism. Because once again, I told you before, a part of military and a part of war tactics is to pretend to be conquering an enemy. Meanwhile, you are that very enemy. And this is what I believe the United States have done in so many places around the world. They have inserted themselves in certain military personnel under the disguise of terrorists. And they have terrorized nations around the world, only to come to those very same nations and play or offer security against the very terroristic group that you've created.
I'm going to suppress my salary. Don't pay me as a president. Pay me as a soldier. And everybody in the country decided from now on we're going to give a portion, a percentage of our salaries into this box so that this box can enable us to go and fight and defeat terrorists. Congratulations. Now he's done something really, really great, creating a tomato plant where they're going to produce tomato and sell it.
Remember to follow Street Icon on all social media platforms. Street Icon 8080 on the YouTube platform. That's Street Icon 8080 on the YouTube platform. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about the stories you just heard. How specifically do they make you feel? Did you know about them? Drop a comment in the comment section, and always remember, stay vigilant, stay safe, peace.